The docking bay of the Varen Accord station reeked of scorched metal and ozone. Ambassador Solon Cade of the Threll Compact stood over the wreckage of an escape pod, his 4 eyes narrowing at what remained inside. 2 small shoes, a woman's wedding ring fused to the deck plating, and a child's data slate still glowing with an unfinished lullaby. "Wipe the logs," he told his aide. "No human will ever confirm this happened." He was wrong before the sentence finished leaving his mouth. 3 floors below, in a maintenance shaft no Threll had bothered to seal, a single human engineer named Marcus Vance pressed his palm against a cracked viewport and watched the pod's wreckage drift past. His wife, his daughter, his son, gone in the 11 seconds it took a Threll cruiser to decide a human family wasn't worth the fuel to relocate. Marcus didn't scream. He didn't cry. He simply opened a comm channel to Earth and said 4 words that would echo through Threll military archives for the next decade. "Tell them I'm coming." 3 days earlier, the Meridian star had been humanity's first deep space trade vessel to dock at Varen Station, a neutral waypoint claimed by no single species, but patrolled by the Threll Compact, a coalition of 7 reptilian avian worlds that had ruled the Kesh corridor for 6 centuries. The Threll were not cruel by nature. They were bureaucratic, rigid, obsessed with hierarchy. Humans, to them, were an unranked species. No fleet, no seat on the corridor council. No wait, Marcus Vance had brought his family along for what was supposed to be a routine supply run. His wife Elena, a xenobiologist cataloging corridor flora. Their daughter Ayla, 11, who filled every notebook she owned with sketches of alien ships. And their son Toby, 7, who talked to the ship's AI like it was his best friend. They were the kind of family that made other species uncomfortable to watch, because humans loved loudly. They argued about board games. They sang off-key in the corridors. They held hands in public without shame. To Solon Cade, watching from the observation deck, they were an irritation, an unranked species cluttering his station with their noise, and their children's laughter bouncing off walls meant for silence and order. But he had no idea what kind of mistake he was about to make. A cargo dispute broke out. A minor thing, a mislabeled shipment of medical supplies the Threll accused the Vance family of smuggling. It wasn't true. It didn't matter. Solon needed an example. An unranked species that could be publicly humiliated would remind the other lesser worlds of their place in the hierarchy. He ordered the family's shuttle redirected for inspection. The redirection sent it directly into an unshielded debris field. Elena's last transmission, recovered later from the black box, was 11 seconds long. She wasn't screaming for herself. She was telling Ayla to hold her brother and to keep her eyes closed. The council would come to regret ignoring that black box. Marcus Vance was not a soldier. He was a propulsion engineer, 44 years old, with a bad knee and a habit of humming while he worked. He had never fired a weapon outside of a training range. He had never wanted to. But grief, when it has nowhere else to go, becomes purpose. He didn't return to Earth. Instead, he walked into the station's central registry and requested formal recognition of the incident under corridor law, a right technically available to any species, even an unranked one, though no unranked species had ever successfully invoked it. Solon laughed when he heard. "Let the human file his complaint," he told the council. "It will vanish into the archive like every other unranked grievance. He will grow tired and go home." He had underestimated exactly how long a human father could stay angry. What Solon didn't know was that Marcus had spent 6 years before Elena helping design fail-safe protocols for the very cruiser class that had destroyed his family's shuttle. He knew its blind spots. He knew its authorization codes hadn't been updated in 11 months, because the requisition form was still sitting in a queue. Threll bureaucracy, ironically, was about to become humanity's greatest weapon. Marcus didn't sabotage anything. He didn't need to. He simply gathered evidence, flight logs, authorization records, the black box transmission, and did something the Threll Compact had never anticipated from an unranked species. He requested a formal, station-wide broadcast trial. The Threll Compact operated on a principle called Ashvellum, open accountability. Any citizen, even an unranked one, could demand a public hearing if they had evidence of wrongdoing by an official. It was an ancient law, rarely invoked, mostly ceremonial. No one expected it to actually work. The council had made a terrible mistake ignoring how seriously humans take ceremony. When the hearing opened in the station's grand chamber, every species docked at Varen tuned in. The Threll expected a grieving, unranked human to fumble through an emotional plea that would be dismissed within minutes. Instead, Marcus stood at the center of the chamber, and played Elena's 11-second transmission for the entire corridor to hear silence. Even the Threll, who prided themselves on emotional restraint, could not fill that silence. Then Marcus laid out the flight logs, timestamp by timestamp, showing the shuttle's redirect order came directly from Solon Cadide's personal authorization code, issued 8 minutes before the debris field was scheduled for automated clearing. Solon hadn't made a mistake. He had known. The truth stunned the entire corridor. Representatives from a dozen unranked species, who had endured similar dismissals over the decades, began transmitting their own testimonies in real time. Minor humiliations, ignored grievances, small cruelties that had never been given a platform before. Marcus's case had cracked something open that the Threll hierarchy had spent 6 centuries keeping sealed shut. Solon, backed into a corner, made his second mistake. He called Marcus's grief an unranked species making noise it does not have the standing to make. Nobody in that chamber expected what Marcus said next. "You're right," Marcus said quietly. "I don't have standing under your hierarchy, so I'm not asking for justice as a ranked citizen. I'm asking as a father whose children are dead, because a man decided their lives weighed less than his convenience." He turned to the assembled representatives. "Ask yourselves what your hierarchy is actually protecting." The vote that followed wasn't close. Even species that had no love for humanity could not ignore the black box recording, the falsified logs, or the sight of a father who had not raised his voice once during the entire proceeding. Solon Cadide was stripped of his ambassadorial rank and remanded for a full compact tribunal. The first time in Threll history an official had been convicted through a case brought by an unranked species. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise of the day. As Solon was escorted from the chamber, he turned back toward Marcus, his composure finally cracking. "You could have taken a weapon," he snarled. "You could have killed me 100 times over these last 3 days. Why didn't you?" Marcus's answer traveled across every species translation feed at once, and it was the line that would later be quoted in corridor history archives for generations. "Because my daughter used to draw pictures of your ships and hope she'd get to fly one someday. I'm not going to become the reason the next human family gets treated the way mine was. I'm going to make sure it can't happen again." The chamber had never gone that quiet before. In the months that followed, the Vance case became the legal precedent that finally forced the Threll Compact to grant humanity provisional corridor standing. Not because of a fleet, not because of a show of force, but because one grieving engineer had refused to let bureaucracy bury the truth. Marcus didn't celebrate. He returned to Earth with a small memorial box containing Ayla's sketchbook and Toby's favorite toy ship. He planted a garden behind his house where the swing set used to be. But every year on the anniversary of the accident, representatives from a dozen species, Threll included, now under new leadership that had studied the case as a warning, sent a single message to Marcus Vance: "We remember. We will not repeat it." Solon Cadide served his sentence in a compact rehabilitation colony, and it was said that he kept, pinned above his cell door, a printed transcript of Elena's 11-second transmission. Not as punishment forced upon him. He'd requested it himself, because even a man who believed unranked lives weighed nothing had finally understood, standing in that silent chamber, exactly how much one family had been worth. And somewhere in the Kesh Corridor archives, filed permanently under precedent, Ashvellum, Case 001, sat the record that changed everything. Not a story of humanity winning through strength, but through refusing to let grief become anything less than the truth. Some species conquer worlds with weapons. Humanity had just conquered a 6th-century hierarchy with a black box recording, and a father who would not stop asking questions.